I'm a professor in the biology department at MIT, and I will be co-teaching this course with Penny Chisholm, who's a professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, as well as a professor in biology department as well. Penny was recently featured in the journal Nature. She's a very well-known oceanographer who's become deservedly famous for discovering a very small bacterium that's capable of carrying out photosynthesis. For many years, oceanographers used filters. The holes were big enough that this bacterium went through, and so when they were doing their studies of the ocean and how the biomass that was there and all the fluxes and so on, they didn't know this organism existed, which can form up to 50% of the biomass in parts of the ocean. So Penny's really a wonderful lecturer, a wonderful person, and she'll be teaching the component of 7014, which deals with ecology and the environment. And this is a section of 7014 that makes it different from the other two versions, 7012 and 7013. So for me, personally, this is an absolutely wonderful, exciting opportunity to be able to teach this introductory biology course. For some of you, I know that biology is going to either be a major part of your career, or quite possibly, even if you're in engineering or something else, you will find yourselves working with a biological system. You can see that happening all over campus these days, that more and more engineering departments are finding that they're working on problems that come from biology or have a biological component. I'm sure there are at least a few of you here who are only here because it's a required course, and you might well wish you were somewhere else. However, I will do my best to try to communicate to you why you need to know some biology too. I think most of you know you can hardly pick up a newspaper these days without running into something that demands a knowledge of biology, something about stem cells, something about cloning humans, something about a new drug, lots of things having to do with biological effects on the environment and so on. You're also going to be confronted with decisions about your health, about the health of your loved ones, concerning cancer, concerning whether a child might have birth defects, all sorts of issues that will affect your personal lives that demand an understanding of biology. So I feel with some passion that whether you think you're going to need biology in your professional career or not, everyone in this institution needs some understanding of biology to just live their ordinary lives. I also think, as MIT students, you're going to be looked at as you go through your lives as people who are knowledgeable about science and engineering, and you'll be asked questions that go far beyond your immediate area of expertise. And again, I think it's another reason for needing to know some of biology. Anyway, it's an absolutely wonderful time to teach biology because things have just been exploding over the last 2 or 3 decades, and things are moving faster than ever. And another wonderful thing about teaching biology is that MIT is an absolutely marvelous place to teach it. Just to sort of drive this home, in the biology department alone, there are 4 Nobel laureates who got honored for critical discoveries in biology. Gobind Khorana, who's just down the hall from me, synthesized the first gene. It was an extraordinary feat of synthesis of organic chemistry, synthesizing DNA. When I was an undergrad, I was a chemistry major, but I had to take an introductory biology course, and at that point, the DNA wasn't mentioned in the high school courses. So the first time that I heard about DNA was in my introductory biology course, and that determined my career direction. I thought that was such an interesting molecule that I wanted to work on it, and I tucked myself into one of the labs in Ottawa, Canada, where I grew up, that was trying to synthesize DNA, synthesize pieces of a gene. and as I turned out later, competing unsuccessfully with my now colleague Goban Khorana. Susumu Tanagawa got a Nobel Prize for discovering the amazing molecular operations that underlie the diversity of the immune system. Your immune system has a capacity to recognize viruses and bacteria, all sorts of different pathogens, and including molecules. It can recognize molecules that haven't even ever been synthesized in the history of life. And we'll talk towards the end of the course about the way that happens, and you'll see why Susumu got his Nobel Prize. Phil Sharp got his for discovering RNA splicing, a completely unanticipated component of the very heart of molecular biology. And then Bob Horvitz, who's a peer of mine, we started at MIT at the same time, and our labs were side by side for many years, got his Nobel Prize in 2000 for discovering a phenomena. The general term is programmed cell death. And it plays all sorts of important roles in biology, from sculpting the shapes of organs and tissues. We initially have webs when we're developing between our fingers, and those go away because of a kind of programmed cell death, that the cells that were making the web disappear. And another role of that is to prevent cancer, that if cells sense that something is very messed up, they have a sort of suicide program that would make them destroy themselves. And if that doesn't happen, those cells could go on and become more and more abnormal and eventually turn into an invasive cancer. Anyway, there's a picture of Bob when the Institute was celebrating his Nobel Prize. He's getting a congratulatory kiss from Martha Constantine Patton, also a professor in the biology department who happens to be Bob's wife. Most of you know that the human genome has now been sequenced. That was one of the huge undertakings, most important undertakings in modern biology over the last while. It was an incredible feat. Each cell has, as most of you know, 46 chromosomes. That's a total of about 2 meters of DNA in every human cell. And that 2 meters of DNA is composed of about 3 million DNA base pairs of these letters A, T, G, and C that we'll be talking about as we go through the course. So to sequence the genome, had to work out the sequence of the exact run of these A, G, T, and C's along the backbone for 3 billion base pairs. And that genome encodes somewhere between 20 and 30,000 genes, and we'll be talking about the proteins that are encoded by most of those genes and their important roles as we go on in the course. What some of you may not know is the key role that MIT played in this. About a third of the genome was sequenced at the Whitehead MIT Genome Center, and here's some of the robots that were used to sequence that DNA. And that sequencing effort was led by Eric Lander, whose name some of you may recognize because he teaches the fall version of 701 along with Bob Weinberg.